How did you meet your so? Found a note on my car that said I was good looking and included a phone number. Thought I was being trolled. Decided to text number 3 days later cause lonely. It was girl that lived upstairs. I went and knocked on her door and we ate dinner. 2 years later and we haven't been apart since. I still have the note in my wallet. Edit, photo of the note. We were both stood up on Tinder's dates at the same restaurant. We both had an awkward "are you" insert name? With 2 disappointing no responses we both hung out at the bar for a drink while waiting. We both had no-show dates so I asked if she wanted to dine together. Fast forward to now and we are now planning a wedding. Nursing school. If you're a straight guy, it's pretty much a haven. Can confirm. Also at work. Only guy with like 30 women. Everyone loves me and 3 coworkers want to get in my pants. 2 did already. I had a rather rambunctious party at my house, and this guy I've never seen before appears as I'm passing out shots in the kitchen. I think he's cute and follow him out of the corner of my eye all night, but act all nonchalant and aloof. A mutual friend brought him to introduce him around. He'd just moved here, and I spent the next 2 months charming him and throwing other parties to invite him to. My friends were all trying to ask him out but I blocked them all and sealed the deal. Married just a couple of years later. Turns out he was smitten at first sight too, but we both played it cool because we're insecure fuckers. In line at a concert for our favorite band. It was great luck. I was ahead in line and next to an annoying douche so I just left to get in the back of the line and wound up next to my now so. I was drunk and she was drunker. On a related note, I met my so in AA. She was the super cute one who had been sober for 7 years already when I was new. That was 30 years ago and we are both still sober and still in love. Talk about beating the odds. We both played RuneScape as kids and had stayed in contact after we stopped playing. Now we are engaged and living together. Wait. You stopped playing RuneScape? Filthy casuals. Well, we did recently buy memberships to play old school. So we haven't quite entirely. Just a long break smile. They always come back. We both worked at Walmart. We were both on a lunch break in the McDonald's. I looked at him and thought, man, he's kinda ugly. The next day his grandfather introduced us and I realized I was kinda off and he was actually really good looking. So a week later I went through his line and asked if he wanted to see a movie or something and he said yes. It was pretty much love at second sight. She was my housemate. Got drunk one night, hooked up. Kept repeating that cycle, but then eventually we started doing it sober. We told ourselves it was just for fun but then we stopped so as to not disrupt the house dynamic, because it was a really great share house and we were all super close friends. She liked me, but I kept telling myself I was not emotionally into her, although I absolutely was. She was my best friend, until she brought someone home one night. I got a mad case of jealousy and a few days later told her how I honestly felt. I'm glad she called my bluff like that actually. We then started dating. The housemates were totally fine with it and we continued to live in that house for another year and a half. She's my favorite person in the world and all our friends think we're the cutest couple. They say there's all these rules about not dating your housemates, but we took that chance and could not have been happier. If it feels right, go for it. And if you want to keep living with those friends, just make sure you're both really good communicators so you can keep a nice harmonious household. A task that was never too difficult for us anyway. She's living in another country for this year. I haven't seen her since January, but I'm going over for a 7-week European holiday with her real soon. Can't wait to see her again. Tinder. For real, not joking. We had both gone through pretty intense breakups and were just looking to He's a scientist and I have background in biology. We hit it off over beers and talking about centrifugal woes. The sex was amazing so I kept coming back. I'm moving to France in May to spend the rest of my life with him. Same. Had ended a 5-year relationship recently. Was spamming Tinder and anything that moved. Met her on a Saturday. Spent Saturday, Sunday, and Monday with her. Deleted the app and now our 1-year anniversary is coming up on Memorial Day weekend. I met my so on Tinder too. He was looking for just friends with benefits, nothing serious. I wasn't really looking for anything. A month later, we both admitted we had caught feelings for the other. So the Cubs had just won the World Series for the first time in 108 years and 5 million people swarmed the streets of downtown the day of the parade to celebrate. A little tipsy, I run into a guy in the crowd, literally run into, as in I trip all over him and nearly knock him over. I look up at him and say without thinking, say you're hot, and he looks at me and says you're beautiful, and before I can process he kisses me, In the middle of the sea of blue sports fans we just start making out like no one's watching. After sobering up a bit, he asks me on a date. I agree. We talk, and it turns out we have a lot in common, we really hit it off. Now, we are just a couple weeks away from 6 months. I found my best friend and love of my life that day. Given the size of the crowd, it was probably not you, but I swear I remember seeing this. He was dating a close friend of mine. She was dating everyone else. He was talking about marrying her. She was only in it because he was financially stable. He eventually straight out asked me if she was cheating. I am a terrible liar, so I told him the truth. They split up, he kept hanging around, we started talking, and when I decided it was time for me to leave the marriage from hell that I was in, I recruited him to help me. As soon as things were over between my husband and I, we started spending the majority of the time on the phone together. I was the first person that knew when he was coming back to town. We were each other's first phone call with good news or bad news. To clarify here, I did not leave my husband for him. It was a terrible marriage and I was in hell and making plans to escape before I even met him. 2 weeks after I filed for divorce, he invited me and my kids to spend the weekend at his house. We ended up not leaving, by mutual agreement. Last October, we moved into our first house together. Our daughter is going to be here in 7 weeks or less. I'm happy, the kids are happy, I assume he's happy. At a bar on Halloween a couple years ago with an Alice Cooper cover band. She was there dressed like Gene Simmons of Kiss, except busty and blonde. It was her friend's bachelorette party. My so was going around the joint with a box and cue cards, asking people to write the bride-to-be advice in marriage/sex/ etc. Most people didn't take it very seriously and wrote to anal or some such. Which is fine, but, you know. I was there with some people from work, none of which I like too much. One, in fact, is a real asshole, older guy. He started hitting on her in a real slimy way, so much so that she didn't even ask me to write anything. But I stop her and ask if I can. I write on 4 cue cards, front and back, small wording, my advice to her friend. Basically, what I wrote was to picture her relationship as a house. You have a foundation of trust, walls of honesty, and a roof of forgiveness. These are all aspects of a house you wouldn't want to be without. You're both going to make mistakes, you're both going to hurt one another, so you both have to be willing to fess up to it and forgive one another. Have each other's backs. You're partners now. The point of that is to make life easier, not harder. And there's no tomorrow. Well, this got me to be able to buy her a drink. I hung out with her in the small bachelorette party. And later I took her home. The next day was a Sunday. We woke up at 9 a.m., she didn't leave until 9 p.m. We laid in bed the whole time talking and laughing and fucking and eating pizza. And we've been best friends ever since. We'll be getting married next summer. We met over World of Warcraft. I invited him to the guild I was running, he used me as a quick healer Fell in love, rest is history. Same. We met as PC launched. He was designated as the guild jewel crafter, so I sent him all my miscellaneous gems, in-game mail titled shinies. 4 years later, we exchanged real-life shinies. We met at work. She was in a marriage that I now know was beyond a complete train wreck, but we clicked right off the bat working together and became pretty close friends. We hung out a few times outside of work and it was always a blast. When the divorce went through, we talked and hung out a bit more and minor sparks flew, but nothing came of it. I was seeing someone else and she was in no place for a relationship, so nothing happened. We kept in touch for 8 months, during which I suffered my own breakup, while she was abroad getting her head sorted out, with contact becoming more frequent and flirtatious. We both realized there was something happening there. I officially asked her out the same day she returned to the USA, and now we're doing the thing. We haven't been together nearly as long as some of the other posters here, only a few months based on the official start of our relationship, but we've known each other for years, thus skipping a lot of the getting to know each other part of the relationship. I haven't been this happy in years, and I'm already 100% sure this is who I'm spending the rest of my life with, assuming she doesn't get sick of me tagging her in shit posts like this one. Hi/you/iridescent song. I know I've told you like a million times, but I love you. Craigslist. Pre-Craigslist killer era. A friend and I were goofing around in the personals section making fun of ads. I came across his and noticed he was in the same area. His ad made him seem cool, his pic was cute. So I sent him a message. After we exchanged a few emails, I found out he went to the same elementary school where my mom used to teach, and we knew mutual people, kids I went to elementary with that he ended up going to HS with. We had our first date at IHOP and spent the evening talking about movies and video games. 8 years later, we're still together. OkCupid. I had the worst date ever with a guy who made me sit out in the drizzling cold at an outdoor ice cream place. And he thought the Middle East was a country, so I faked a migraine to end the date. Previously, I was the type of woman who would start talking to a guy online and focus on only him until we went on a lackluster date, cry to my girlfriends about how I'm never going to find a man, and then start the process over. After this one though, I decided to date like a man and just start stacking up as many dates as possible. I shotgun the same generic message to about 50 guys, and my so was one who wrote back. After a few days of texting back and forth, I said, "Well, you seem cool and non-murdery. I'm going to be at the shooting range on Sunday at 5. Let me know if you'll be there." He showed up and showed me the AR-15 he built, and I remember thinking, damn, I'm gonna marry this man. We went to dinner and drinks later, and we shut down the bar just laughing and talking. We canceled dates with other people the next day to see each other again. It's been 2.5 years and now we've been engaged for a year, own a home together, and are planning our wedding. Smile. Walked into a Costco and instantly fell for the adorable girl checking Costco cards at the door. A few weeks later I decided to ask her out. For 1 full year I walked into that Costco confidently, chickened out and went and bought a hot dog and soda. About 3 times a week. Finally one day I did it. She said no. I gave her a piece of paper with my name and phone number and asked her to call me if she ever wanted to chat on the phone. She called that night. We've been married 17 years. I had a semi-successful blog and she was a flirty fan. Please note this was a decade ago, when bloggers were more or less what YouTubers are now. I had to spend a couple of days where she lived for a personal matter and had a lot of free time, so I asked her to meet in person. We had actually not talked much before that first date, but we connected immediately. She asked me to meet again before I left, which we did, and long story short I ended up spending the rest of the week with her. We've been together for 10 years. I was friends with his brother. He invited me to his house party. While none of the other friends we hang out with decided to go. Food and free drinks. I was one of the first people there. My current so opened the door and basically entertained me and this other girl. The party was fun and I drank a lot. I asked my friend if I could crash on the couch. He said sure, so I went to go lay down. Except I saw a tray of ziti still out, so I made a huge plate and warmed it up. Then I dropped it. My future so came up at the time and started to clean it up while I made another plate. I also dropped that one and he cleaned that up as well. My third plate was the charm. I went over to the couch and he came over saying I was not sleeping down here. He took me upstairs. That interaction was almost 4 years ago. It would lead to the most intense roller coaster ride I ever been on. Crazy to think some dropped pasta would be the turning factor of my life. I first saw him while he was working as a cashier at a grocery store. He seemed out of place there, which made me go back time and time again just to see if he actually worked there or if he was on loan from another store. I didn't see him for a few months, so I eventually gave up and started going to another, closer grocery store. It wasn't until one night my old roommate picked me up from work and we went to that grocery store. He was there, so I couldn't resist going through his line. I gave him my phone number. Now we're married with a kid on the way. I still thank my old roommate for picking me up that night. The first couple of weeks my freshman year of college, I made a few personal goals. One was to introduce myself to someone new in every class, and the other was to spend 30 minutes in the dormitory lounge either joining or starting a conversation with someone. These were really difficult for me to do because I'm extremely shy and nervous talking to people I don't know, but I knew it would be good for me. One night in the lounge there was a large group of people talking and on the other side of the lounge there were 2 people talking. I decided to join the 2 people and introduce myself. One of them was an international student with limited English, which made it easier for me to talk with him, since we could only have very simple conversations, which I found to be less intimidating. He is currently my fiancé. The summer before my senior year of high school I went to what I still call nerd camp, which was basically a month-long summer camp with math and science classes at one of the universities in my state that would look good on college applications. I was put on the waiting list for one of the camps I didn't want. I wanted the biology camp but got chosen for the physics camp, and got in last minute. My crush at the camp was a witty, sarcastic and charismatic Russian boy. My newfound friends and I conspired to get him to like me. I flirted with all my might and actually got him to flirt back. I became pretty friendly with his roommate and other friends because I tried to hang out with them so much. I asked the Russian boy to go swimming with me one afternoon and he said yes but bailed right beforehand. His roommate offered to go in his stead. His quiet, cute, and goofy roommate. We've been together for 7 years and married for almost 1 now. He teases me that he wasn't my first choice but I still thank Ivan for flaking on me that day. Not how we met, but how I asked her out. We were hanging out with some mutual friends and we were the last to leave the restaurant because I drove her. At the time she was in dance/ballet, and said something to the effect of "I can kick really high, I could kick over your head." I took her bet. She failed to kick over my head, and instead connected with my jaw. After profusely apologizing, she finally asked, "What can I do to make it up to you?" And a light bulb goes off in my head. "You could go on a date with me?" She kinda stared for a second, but quickly agreed. That was 4 years ago and our wedding is in August. I was recently single and was invited to a pool party by a friend. Normally I would have skipped since it was on a Wednesday night and other than the friend that invited me I didn't know anyone there, but at the last minute I decided to go. I'm pretty awkward in social situations, so I spent most of my time hanging off to the side while my friend socialized. At some point everyone was sufficiently drunk that we thought a contest on who could make the biggest splash sounded like a good idea. Even though I weighed all of about 130 pounds and was competing against people easily twice my size or more, I managed to win. It's all about maximizing the surface area right before making contact with the water. This gorgeous girl came up to me to congratulate me and tell me how impressed she was by the size of my splash. We talked the rest of the night. That was 15 years ago. This November we'll be celebrating our 13th wedding anniversary.